All right, so in the wake of our right-wing reactionary Supreme Court overturning Roe v. Wade and stripping millions of Americans of some of their fundamental human rights, the Democratic Party has been putting together a fierce response to this. They have been doing everything from fundraising emails to reading out poems to make people feel better, but for some weird reason, this doesn't seem to be enough for the American people, and some protesters here who were interviewed on MSNBC had some things to say about these strategies that are being deployed by the Democratic Party right now. So let's go ahead and watch this clip.
So I received a text message from Joe Biden's campaign yesterday saying that the Supreme Court had overturned Roe versus Wade and that it was my responsibility to then rush $15 to the Democratic National Party. And I thought that was absolutely outrageous because my rights should not be a fundraising point for them or a campaigning point. They have had multiple opportunities to codify Roe into law over the past 20, 30, 40, 50 years, and they haven't done it. And if they're going to keep campaigning on this point, they should actually do something about it.
What are you most worried about, Jillian?
I'm most worried about what comes next, because Roe versus Wade was a precedent for Obergefell versus Hodges, Loving versus Virginia, Irving versus Texas, gay marriage, interracial marriage, and privacy in the bedroom. And those, as Clarence Thomas came out yesterday, they're going to be falling like dominoes.
You come from Texas. You're in Austin, Texas. There's a trigger law in place in Austin in 30 days.
Yes.
Abortion is going to be banned in your state.
Abortion has been banned at 6 weeks in my state since last September, which is an essential all-out ban because most women don't even realize they're pregnant before that point. And there are women in Texas who've already died and have already been arrested for having an abortion or a miscarriage, because we can't really tell that.
It seems like you have obvious anger towards the Democratic Party because you feel as if they've missed chances to codify Roe up until this point, and then here we are. What does that mean for you when it comes to the midterm elections and getting more Democrats elected to move forward with trying to codify Roe?
Well, when it comes down to the primaries, which I think are coming up in the next couple months, it means that we need to get as many people to the polls as possible to vote for more progressive Democrats. We need to get the old white Democrats out of office and put in new, younger people who will actually defend the rights of women and people all over this country. And then when it comes to midterms, we need to make sure that we have those same people who voted for the progressive people in the primaries coming back to the midterms and voting again, and making sure that these more progressive Democrats get into office and can actually make the change that we need.
All right, so there's the clip there. You have some protesters who were outside. This was in Washington, D.C., I believe, and they got some things to say about the Democratic Party. And listen, I mean, I don't get it. I mean, are you really not satisfied with the hard work and the effort that Nancy Pelosi's staffers put into writing this email to ask you for $15 so that they can go and, support anti-Trump Republicans like Liz Cheney and, keep supporting their anti-choice Democrats like Henry Cuellar? Are you trying to say that wasn't enough, that somehow Democrats are being feckless cowards and they're completely incompetent on actually acting on the agenda that the American people overwhelmingly support? Is that what you're trying to imply? Because if that's the case, then yeah, they would be absolutely 100% correct. So, I mean, here from crazy ass moments in American politics, less than an hour after repealing Roe v. Wade, Nancy Pelosi uses it to ask for more donations. I mean, this is what they're doing. And I've been saying this for weeks now on this channel, even before we had the Roe decision that actually came down from SCOTUS, because this was always going to be their strategy, because this is exactly what the Democratic Party is. They thrive on losing constantly over and over and over to conservatives and the Republican Party because that is what gets them the money. They love being the victims. They love, using these types of situations as an opportunity to bolster their chances in the midterms so that they don't have to do anything concrete, so that they don't have to do anything material to improve the lives of average working class Americans. And so they're going to be using this as a wedge issue in the midterms. And then guess what? Even if they pull off some sort of a miracle win and hold on to their slim majorities in the House and in the Senate, you're still going to be left with the exact same goddamn situation that you're left with right now, with having to overturn the filibuster, or at least doing some sort of a carve out in order to pass codifying Roe v. Wade at the legislative level, pass it through Congress. So that situation is not going to change regardless of how much money that you give to Nancy Pelosi or other corporate Democrats for that matter. But as she was saying in that clip, I do agree that to the extent that electoralism is going to drive any action whatsoever on this, it would be in Democratic primaries where you're trying to throw out a lot of these corporate ghouls. But beyond that, I mean, again, we had the fundraising emails, we had the Nancy Pelosi responding to the Roe's destruction by reading an inspirational poem that I covered on this channel a couple of days ago. So, I mean, really just a completely pathetic response here from the Democratic leadership class. But this is nothing new. This has been very consistent, specifically to the issue of abortion rights. Here from 2017, you got Nancy Pelosi thinks abortion is fading as an issue. And she's wrong. And yes, of course she's wrong, because this overturning of Roe v. Wade, it's not an aberration. It didn't come out of nowhere. It didn't start in 2016 when Donald Trump won the election. This has been something that they have been working for 50 years, since Roe v. Wade was established as a precedent. And so Democrats have had ample time to do something about it. We go back to the Obama administration, who, just as a reminder, was promising on the campaign trail that codifying Roe v. Wade would be his top legislative priority. And then he turned around just, a couple of years into his presidency and said that it wasn't a priority for him, that they didn't have any real interest in doing it, even when he had a supermajority control of Congress. So, you can reach back all the way to the Barack Obama administration. But going back to Nancy Pelosi, you also had this from just a couple years ago, back in 2017. Pelosi, don't kick out anti-abortion Democrats from the party. And it's not just about not kicking them out of the party. It's also about a modern example here of trying their best to defeat progressive challengers who are trying to unseat a lot of these anti-choice politicians with primary contests. So here from Vice, Nancy Pelosi is trying to save an anti-choice Democrat as Roe v. Wade falls. So this was that election down in Texas between Henry Cuellar, who was under FBI investigation, had a whole host of other issues with baggage surrounding this guy. He's anti-choice, and he was faced with a progressive challenger, Jessica Cisneros, who was pro-choice and was really solid on all of her legislative priorities in terms of where she's at relative to her constituents and the American people more broadly. Definitely would have been a far superior representative, and yet you have Nancy Pelosi, Jim Clyburn, the rest of the corporate Democratic establishment, who was rallying behind this guy right here, who literally ended up winning by a tiny margin that could have been overcome if they didn't put their foot in this race. So, I mean, again, you don't just have to go throughout history. This is also happening right now. I mean, she was making robocalls on behalf of Henry Cuellar, an anti-choice Democrat, as the Roe v. Wade leak had already come out, and we knew that this was on the horizon. So, I mean, this type of a race, you could say that it's just one example in this most recent series of elections, but at the same time, given the makeup of the House, given the makeup of a Senate, literally one vote could make the difference when it comes to attempting to actually codify Roe v. Wade at the federal level. So this type of thing definitely does have an impact. But now we get to President Joe Brandon over here, who is openly coming out. Again, I've talked about this numerous times on this channel, but he's openly come out against the single strategy that the single realistic strategy that Democrats have at their disposal in order to codify Roe at the federal level. So this is why I say that all of these fundraising email requests, all of these different attempts to bolster Democrats' chances in the midterms is all going to be pointless if the president of your party, the leader of your party, Joe Biden, is not even in favor of getting rid of the filibuster, because Democrats have a negative 1 billion% chance of getting 60 senators in these midterm elections. It would be an absolute miracle if they even managed to hold on to a tiny majority in the Senate. And so you're still going to be left with this exact same situation where you're going to have to get rid of the filibuster in order to codify Roe at the federal level. And so Joe Biden can come out all he wants and give these nice platitudes and tweets and say, I believe that abortion is a fundamental human right. The right to choose is, fundamental to this country. It's been a super precedent for 50 years. But if you're not willing to get rid of the filibuster, then what are you really saying? I mean, you're saying that you favor this undemocratic policy of the filibuster, which was initially put in place by segregationists in order to oppose the Civil Rights Amendment. You're basically saying that you favor the filibuster more than you actually favor protecting abortion rights as human rights, as you say that you believe them to be. So, I mean, it's just a complete contradiction, but this is the same exact liberal mindset of prioritizing our precious institutions, protecting the sanctity of the Supreme Court, protecting the sanctity of some made-up fucking rule in the filibuster, which is incredibly undemocratic again, and prioritizing all of those different things over protecting the American people's fundamental rights. I mean, that's what they're saying here. But, Republicans are going to continue chipping away at a lot of those different rights. It's not just abortion rights, as the girl in this clip was pointing out here. They're also going to go after, sodomy laws. They're also going to go after cancer, gay marriage, and a whole host of other things that are going to be on the chopping block in the immediate future. And so it goes much beyond just this, but I think that AOC had a good point here when she did an interview with, I believe this is Chuck Todd. Yes, absolutely atrocious journalist, but nonetheless, we're going to hear from AOC here on how this is not even just about the crisis surrounding abortion rights, but it also goes much farther beyond that, and that Democrats need to have a much more coherent response to all of this. So let's go ahead and jump into this clip.
I know most of what may change things is going to have to be done at a ballot box. But what would you like to see the Biden administration do between now and November?
I think what we need to do is show the American people that when they give the Democratic Party power and when they actually do vote for us, that we will be using and we are willing to use the power that they do give us in order to merit increased expansions in our majority. So in terms of what I think that the president's administration should be able to do, we have many ideas. We have some ideas coming from Senator Warren, signed a letter along with 25 other Democratic senators asking President Biden to explore opening healthcare clinics on federal lands in red states in order to help people access the health care and abortion services that they need. We also must, and President Biden did indicate that he was going to start looking into expanding abortion access via the pill, as well as educational efforts henceforth. But also what I believe that the president and the Democratic Party needs to come to terms with is that this is not just a crisis of Roe, this is a crisis of our democracy. The Supreme Court has dramatically overreached its authority. We had two conservative senators in the United States Senate, Senator Manchin and Senator Collins, come out with a very explosive allegation that several Supreme Court justices misled them during their confirmation hearings and in the lead up to their confirmation. This is a crisis of legitimacy. We have a Supreme Court justice whose wife participated in January 6th and who used his seat to vote against providing documents that potentially led to evidence of such to investigators in Congress. This is a crisis of legitimacy, and President Biden must address that.
All right, so I think that she was definitely correct in that take. Again, this goes much farther beyond just Roe v. Wade. I'm going to do a video either today or tomorrow breaking down the upcoming decision on West Virginia versus the EPA, but so many different things that this conservative activist majority on the Supreme Court is pushing for right now, just completely overstepping what the grounds of the Supreme Court are supposed to be in the first place. I mean, they're not supposed to be the body that is getting to enforce like basically legislative ideas or concepts on the rest of the American people. I mean, they're supposed to be theoretically these independent justices who are just interpreting the Constitution and applying it, you know, in smaller ways. But basically what this is you have an activist majority put in place by politicians, most of whom didn't even win the popular vote, put in place by think tanks like the Federalist Society, which are explicitly political and had openly stated goals like overturning Roe v. Wade. So, you know, the idea that the Supreme Court has to be this respected institution is complete and utter bullshit. I mean, let's be honest about this. This is not a Supreme Court that is legitimate in the sense that it is serving the interests of the American people. And so the response to that should not be to go out onto the steps of the Supreme Court and sing "God Bless America," which is literally what Democrats were doing. The response to this should be aggressively pushing back and trying to reduce the power of the Supreme Court in a moment like this, because they're obviously going above and beyond what their bounds are supposed to be, even in theory. But she also reiterated it down here with actual like policy proposals that could be implemented by Democrats right now. She said that they should restrain judicial review, expand the court, clinics on federal lands, expand education and access to Plan C, repeal the Hyde Amendment, hold floor votes codifying Griswold, Obergefell, Lawrence, Loving, etc., vote on Escobar's bill protecting clinics. So, I mean, yeah, she says we can do it, we can at least try. So, I mean, yeah, when it comes down to it, that's what voters are looking for. They're not looking for goddamn fundraising emails in their, inboxes. They're not not looking for Nancy Pelosi to go out there and spit out some, ridiculous poem in front of the American people to try to make them, feel better, I guess, or to pretend as if she understands the pain that people are going through in a moment like this. They just want action. I mean, that's what the American people want. That's what young people want who disproportionately have been bailing on Democrats and Joe Biden. This is what people want. They just want fucking concrete action on abortion rights, on student debt cancellation, on increasing wages, on expanding union rights in this country, on so many different things that the American people are overwhelmingly unified on. And yet you have a Republican Party which is just completely off the fucking deep end, pushing us further and further towards and basically an outright fascist takeover of the country. And meanwhile, you have Democrats like Nancy Pelosi who can't help but coming out every couple of weeks and calling for a strong Republican Party. You have, a leadership class in Joe Biden who is saying that he's not even in favor of doing the one strategy that would actually protect abortion rights by getting rid of the filibuster. And so it's just a complete fucking failure. And you totally understand the anger, the frustration that, everyday people who are out there in the streets actually protesting are feeling in a moment like this.